After Hyang finished presenting his political views, the entire room fell silent. The elderly officials standing around him could not hide their astonishment. A 9-year-old child stood before them, speaking with unwavering confidence. Even Ryu Jung-yoon, one of the most conservative ministers, had to admit that this child was truly exceptional, simply remarkable, he thought. King Sejong finally spoke. "Did you come up with all of this on your own?" Hyang shook his head and answered honestly, "No, father. I referred to the works of great scholars, and I have also read some books from the West." King Sejong gazed at his son in silence before asking, "Books from the West?" Hyang nodded. He could sense a slight tension in the room. "You've brought up many points that I had never even considered," the king continued. "Even though many institutions and customs have changed since our kingdom was founded, it appears that several outdated systems are still in place." The crown prince bowed his head respectfully. "You flatter me, father." Then, in a calmer tone, he added, "There is a Western saying, new wine must be put into new bottles." The room fell silent once more. He continued, "It has been 30 years since King Taejong established the JOSEON dynasty, yet the suffering of the people remains unchanged. That is why I believe reform is necessary for the future of everyone." Several officials flinched at his final words. At that moment, Hyang lifted his head and looked directly at them with confidence. He declared once more, "Yes, for the future of everyone." Bowing deeply to his father, Hyang formally concluded his presentation. As the crown prince left the main hall, the officials remained silent. Not a single whisper was heard, only a tense, heavy silence. However, that silence was soon broken when someone finally spoke. "What do you think?" Minister Ryu Jung-hyun let out a heavy sigh, his expression full of discontent. "What is wrong with me? My mind feels completely frozen," he murmured to himself, clenching his fists. "We must submit a petition to stop him immediately." The crown prince hides behind grand words like, "for the future of everyone." But in doing so, he disregards our values and traditions. Not only that, but he is also following legalist principles instead of Confucianism. I can only lament this. "Indeed, how can the crown prince have such reckless ideas?" Another official interjected. A similar reaction spread through the Office of Censors. "We must submit a petition to prevent this." "Yes, absolutely." Amidst the rising commotion, Sung-um stood up and spoke loudly. "I will be the first to oppose the crown prince's ideas." His face was firm as he continued. On the surface, the crown prince's words seem logical, but in reality, he is trying to revive the tyranny of Qin Shi Huang. We must stop him. The discussion grew more heated. However, someone suddenly spoke in a lower tone. "His Majesty seems very fond of the crown prince." At once, the atmosphere grew heavier. "Even so, we cannot allow this dynasty to collapse, can we?" At that moment, Sung-um, one of the more influential ministers, lowered his head slightly, his expression filled with worry. Then, in a quiet yet sharp voice, he said, "If the worst comes to pass, we will have no choice but to remove the crown prince." A man beside him gasped, his eyes widening. "Isn't that too extreme?" Sung-um looked at him coldly. "After hearing the crown prince's presentation, you still think this isn't serious? Even the current king was not originally the crown prince." Someone quickly covered his mouth before he could finish his sentence. "Hey, watch your words!" Another person beside him whispered urgently. "Do you think your neck is made of iron?" Silence fell over the room once more. The once heated discussion had turned into an eerie stillness. No one spoke, yet in their hearts one thing was becoming clear. Today marks the beginning of something big. Sung-um angrily brushed away the hand that reached for him and shouted, "Am I wrong? How could a 9-year-old child utter such nonsense?" His gaze was sharp, his voice filled with fury. "We must hold the crown prince's tutors accountable, and even his majesty himself. Discipline has always been the most important thing. If everyone simply praises him without restraint, the consequences will be disastrous." Someone hurriedly interjected. "What you should be saying is that we need to enforce stricter discipline on the crown prince. But speaking of overthrowing him." However, before the man could finish his sentence, Sung-um snapped, "Look at the situation we are facing now. Do you think it's not too late? We must remove him immediately. Only then can we restore the path of a true king." Hearing these words, many officials began to feel uneasy. "You're speaking too loudly," someone whispered, worried about prying ears. On the other hand, some ministers supported the crown prince's views. They spoke amongst themselves with excitement. "It's been a long time since I've felt such relief," one of them said. "At last, we're hearing something that makes sense. I agree, usually we have to listen to endless nonsense. But now, we've heard practical suggestions for what JOSEON truly needs. It feels like my ears have been cleansed." Another official added, "My mind feels enlightened now." And did you see His Majesty's expression earlier? He looked like he wanted to implement those policies immediately. "I never imagined the crown prince would be this extraordinary. With him, the Joseon kingdom will—" Before he could finish his sentence, a group from the opposing faction suddenly approached them. The royal ministers were now divided. Two factions stood face to face, one supporting the crown prince, the other opposing him. As they crossed paths, tensions escalated. Those against the crown prince saw his supporters as big-mouthed hypocrites. Meanwhile, his supporters retaliated by calling them power-hungry hypocrites. "How shameful," someone shouted. That remark only fueled the anger between the two sides. "Let's go! Wasting our time with these hypocrites is pointless. We need to draft a petition. That's the only solution." On the other side, someone smirked and replied, "Do you think we don't know how to write a petition? We should submit one too." The atmosphere grew more heated as both sides prepared to take action. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Hyang was conversing with his father, King Sejong. King Sejong looked at him with pride. "Your presentation today was truly remarkable. There are many policies I want to implement immediately. However, as I mentioned earlier, there are still aspects of your political views that I do not fully understand." The Crown Prince gave a small smile. "Father, you flatter me too much. Honestly, these policies will be difficult to implement under the current circumstances. That's why I believe that as father and son, we should discuss policies more often." King Sejong let out a sigh. "I am slightly concerned about the flood of petitions that will arrive tomorrow." Hyang smiled and said, "The chief secretary is going to have a hard time." King Sejong ended their conversation with a light-hearted remark. "I will send royal dishes to the Secretariat office tomorrow." The next morning, at the Secretariat office, two men stood frozen in place, stunned by the sight before them. Mountains of petitions stacked high on the office desks. One of them spoke. "What did I tell you? This was bound to happen. Did they stay up all night?" His companion replied, "Their stamina is incredible. Just looking at it is terrifying." However, before they could say anything more, another man quickly interrupted. "Standing around won't lighten the workload. Hurry up and sort through all of this." Without wasting time, everyone began working. A man who appeared to be a supervisor said, "As you all know, some of these petitions criticize His Highness the Crown Prince, while others support him. So, we will divide them into two categories." Another man responded, "Understood." That morning in the main hall, King Sejong sat on his throne, his expression grim as he gazed at the towering stack of scrolls before him. His sigh was heavy. "So many protests this time. It seems my ministers have been quite diligent," he remarked sarcastically, casting a glance at them. Feeling the sting of his words, the chief state counselor shot a sharp look at the king, but the others could only bow their heads in silence. Slowly he reached for a scroll at random, his eyes scanning each word carefully. But as he delved deeper into its contents, his expression shifted drastically. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened, and his eyes burned with barely contained fury. Without hesitation, he turned and called out loudly, "Head eunuch!" A man stepped forward respectfully, his voice calm as he responded, "Your Majesty." King Sejong fixed him with a piercing gaze and issued a firm command. "Summon the Crown Prince." Moments later, the doors of the council chambers swung open. The Crown Prince strode in with an air of composure, bowing deeply before his father. "Father, you called for me?" he asked. King Sejong nodded slowly. "Yes, I did. You may stand." As the Crown Prince straightened, the king picked up a scroll, his expression serious. "I called you here because it seems many officials have misunderstood what you said yesterday," he stated. Suddenly his voice rose, echoing throughout the hall. "Chief State Counselor." An elderly official standing among the ministers immediately stepped forward, his face slightly pale, but he answered with the utmost respect. "Yes, Your Majesty." King Sejong's gaze grew sharper. He raised the scroll in his hand and spoke firmly. "This is your petition. Read it aloud so the Crown Prince may hear it directly." The entire hall tensed. The officials exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that this situation was about to escalate. Chief State Counselor Ryu Jung-hyun hesitated. "Your Majesty, But King Sejong left him no choice. With a decisive motion, he extended the scroll toward him. "Take it. The Crown Prince must hear it directly from you to prevent any misunderstandings." There was no way out. With slightly trembling hands, Ryu Jung-hyun accepted the scroll. He took a deep breath before finally beginning to read. "I, Chief State Counselor Ryu Jung-hyun, respectfully submit this petition to Your Majesty." King Sejong swiftly interrupted, his tone sharp. "Skip the formalities and get to the point." Ryu Jung-hyun stiffened. His face turned pale, but he dared not defy the king's command. With a slightly unsteady voice, he continued. "The Crown Prince's political views, though seemingly reasonable, contain many inappropriate elements." The tension in the room thickened. "First, our kingdom upholds Neo-Confucianism, yet the Crown Prince's proposals lean more toward the academic path of legalism." Some officials began murmuring among themselves. "The principles of legalism are too rigid and could lead to suffering among the people," Ryu Jung-hyun went on. His voice steadied now. He cast a quick glance at King Sejong before proceeding more cautiously. "Second, the Crown Prince has proposed lifting restrictions on children born of concubines." The murmurs grew louder. Some officials straightened their backs, visibly startled by what they had just heard. This rule was established by King Taejong to maintain order within the royal court. Abolishing it recklessly would be an act of great disrespect toward the legitimate heirs. His tone grew firmer, as if trying to solidify his argument. Furthermore, if children of concubines are allowed to hold government positions, history has shown that they may use their influence for personal gain. The murmurs turned into uneasy whispers. The officials exchanged glances, trying to grasp the weight of those words. On the other side of the room, the Crown Prince stood tall. His eyes did not waver as he absorbed every word with unwavering focus. And on his throne, King Sejong remained silent, his expression unreadable. However, his clenched fist resting on the armrest hinted that a storm might soon erupt. Third, the Crown Prince suggests increasing the number of government officials. However, the more officials we have, the heavier the tax burden on the people. Several officials nodded in agreement. In my opinion, if local officials feel overwhelmed by their workload, they should simply seek assistance from local scholars instead of increasing bureaucratic redundancy. Having finished reading, Chief State Councilor Ryu Jung-hyun looked up and firmly stated, "These 3 points prove that the Crown Prince's political views are irrational." The Crown Prince listened attentively, his brows furrowed slightly, his expression calm, yet his eyes betrayed deep contemplation. Ryu Jung-hyun lowered his head, awaiting a response. However, the tension in the room thickened as Ryu Jung-hyun, one of the oldest advisors in the court, clenched his fists in anger. The Crown Prince's gaze now fell upon him. "Father, may I respond?" the Crown Prince asked. His voice was steady, but filled with conviction. King Sejong regarded his son in silence before finally nodding. The Crown Prince stepped forward, standing tall in the center of the hall. The 2 rows of officials seated on either side remained silent. Sensing the growing intensity of the moment, unwavering, Hyang began to speak. First, Chief State Councilor Ryu Jung-hyun claims that Neo-Confucianism is the guiding philosophy of our kingdom. His eyes swept the room, ensuring his words were heard clearly. But is that truly the case? The room fell silent. If we truly understand the teachings of the sages, the true philosophy of this kingdom is the path of the king, with the people as its foundation. Neo-Confucianism is merely a tool we use to achieve that goal. If we limit ourselves to a single tool, are we not restricting our own progress? Some officials stiffened, while others exchanged wary glances. Hyang continued, "Think of the royal path as a plate, and philosophies and systems of governance as chopsticks and spoons." His tone was sharp, yet composed. "Must we truly choose only one tool when we can utilize them all?" A minister trembled, seemingly wanting to interject, but the Crown Prince gave him no opportunity. Neo-Confucianism is merely one branch of Confucianism. Are we so narrow-minded as to fixate on only one school of thought? His words were so compelling that, despite his mounting anger, Ryu Jung-hyun could do nothing but grit his teeth in frustration. The Crown Prince pressed on. "Second, you claim that children born to concubines will abuse their power." He paused briefly, allowing his words to sink in, before continuing in a sharper tone. "But are they the only ones guilty of corruption?" The room buzzed with hushed murmurs. Look at history. People from noble families, whether born legitimate or illegitimate, have all engaged in corruption. Is it not unfair to single out children of concubines? Ryu Jung-hyun could no longer contain himself. He shouted, "Your Majesty!" But the Crown Prince did not stop. "Is it not true that the law clearly states that anyone who takes a concubine is also responsible for their offspring's actions?" The room grew even heavier with tension. The silence was so profound that even the sound of breathing was audible. Officials exchanged uneasy glances, their faces taut under the Crown Prince's piercing gaze. But he was not finished yet. "Most of you have concubines yourselves, do you not?" His words struck like a blade. Some officials flinched, while others lowered their heads, avoiding eye contact. It has long been the custom of esteemed families to bury their own faults while continuing to discriminate against children of concubines. Why is this injustice still tolerated? No one dared to answer. Only a suffocating silence remained, growing heavier by the second. Many heads bowed, as if trying to conceal their guilt. And third, you say that local officials can simply request the assistance of local scholars if they are overwhelmed with work. The Crown Prince locked eyes with Chief State Councilor Ryu Jung-hyun, his gaze unwavering. "Since I first sat beside my father and observed how he governs the nation, I have read countless reports of people dying from starvation." He took a deep breath. "But not once, not a single time, have I ever heard of local scholars stepping in to help them." The entire hall fell into an even deeper silence. The Crown Prince let out a long sigh before continuing. Rather than offering aid, these so-called scholars took advantage of disasters, raising interest rates on loans to outrageous levels. His voice, once controlled, now carried a hint of restrained fury. And then, what happened? The people were forced to sell their lives, becoming refugees as their land was taken from them. His gaze turned sharp as a blade. The Chief State Councilor, Ryu Jung-hyun, flinched at the mention of his name, but the Crown Prince's piercing eyes remained fixed on him. "Tell me, for the powerless commoners, who do they fear more? The wild tigers." He paused, letting the tension build. "Or the government officials and local scholars who bleed them dry?" Ryu Jung-hyun, one of the oldest and most influential advisors in the court, froze. His face turned pale, his head lowering in silence. "I want to hear your answer, Chief Counselor." King Sejong's voice echoed through the hall, shattering the heavy silence. The restless officials grew even more rigid. All eyes turned to Ryu Jung-hyun, whose rigid stance trembled slightly. Beads of sweat rolled down his temples. His lips quivered, struggling to form words, but no sound came out. The Crown Prince remained unwavering. Why are you silent, Chief State Councilor Ryu Jung-hyun? Answer him. The king's command was sharp and absolute. Under unbearable pressure, Ryu Jung-hyun finally mumbled in a barely audible voice. It is the local scholars. The air in the hall grew colder. The officials, who had already been tense, now fidgeted uneasily. King Sejong let out a low scoff before reaching for the towering stack of petitions before him. These petitions are quite interesting. He tapped the scrolls lightly with his fingers before continuing. It seems that the petitions submitted by the others are strikingly similar to that of the chief counselors. His eyes scanned the court. They were sent by different people, yet the contents are almost identical. His voice carried a subtle mockery, yet it was as sharp as a blade. How utterly laughable. The officials held their breath, not daring to speak. Then the king picked up a yellow scroll from the pile and handed it to the crown prince. But this one is different. He leaned back slightly, his gaze unreadable. Read it aloud. The crown prince bowed respectfully. Yes, father. With steady hands, he unrolled the scroll and quickly scanned its contents. The entire court watched in suspense. The words written within could change everything. Suddenly his eyes widened, his brows furrowed, and his expression grew serious. Noticing this, King Sejong spoke in a calm yet knowing tone. What do you think? The crown prince took a deep breath before reading a portion of the petition aloud. If consumption is encouraged, our society will decline, worshipping wealth instead of virtue. That is why the wise rulers of the past divided the people into 4 traditional classes: scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Closing the scroll, his expression turned razor sharp, his eyes gleaming with conviction. I believe the one who wrote this petition deserves severe punishment, father. Gasps rippled through the hall, sweat forming on the officials' brows. None of them had expected the crown prince himself to demand punishment. He looked straight at King Sejong and continued, his voice resolute. First of all, in all political writings and teachings of the sages, there is no mention of such a rigid class division. His tone grew sharper. Yet this person dared to lie, attempting to deceive the ruler with fabricated doctrines. Such a blatant act of disloyalty must be punished accordingly. Suddenly, General Sung stepped forward. His face was flushed red, and his voice rose in protest. Crown Prince, the one who wrote this petition did so out of concern for the nation. Sung took another step closer, his eyes burning with emotion. If you punish someone for offering honest advice just because you don't like it, you will alienate everyone. The crown prince swiftly turned to face him, his gaze razor sharp. Honest advice? Yang let out a cold chuckle. This is not honest advice. This is a deliberate attempt to sow division. This is a fabricated lie. The tension in the room escalated. Sung clenched his teeth and retorted. Since ancient times, the wise have warned that extravagance is a disease that will bring ruin to a nation. We must avoid it at all costs. How can you claim that wastefulness is better than frugality? The crown prince turned to fully face him, his eyes gleaming with intensity. Very well, let me explain it to you again. His voice rang out, clear and unwavering, ensuring that every word left a lasting imprint on those present. Did the sages ever teach that the nobility has the right to exploit the common people? Did they teach that lending grain at an interest rate of over 50% is acceptable? The crown prince took a step forward, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Tell me, why are more and more people being forced to sell themselves into slavery? Why are these exorbitant interest rates driving them to lose everything? He raised a hand and pointed directly at Sung. Are you saying that I should simply allow this to continue, just because it's tradition? Silence fell once again, but this time, it was not out of reverence, it was out of fear. Then, Hyang's voice rang out, breaking the oppressive tension. How dare you think that way? He stood tall, his expression burning with anger. And you call yourself a citizen of JOSEON? The crown prince stood firm. His gaze was unwavering, and his posture showed no trace of hesitation. The royal court now felt like a battlefield, with Hyang standing at its center, a mere child, challenging the traditions upheld by those in power. Enough! The king's voice thundered as he slammed his hand against the table. The room fell into an instant hush. Officials held their breath as the crown prince flinched slightly before lowering his head. I apologize, father. I overstepped my bounds. The king gave his son a stern warning. Even if what you say is true, you must not speak so disrespectfully. Suppressing his emotions, the crown prince responded with deference. Thank you for your mercy, father. The king then shifted his gaze and gave an order. Chief censor, step forward. Yes, your majesty, answered a man in blue robes. Crown prince, hand him the scroll, the king instructed. Hyang extended the petition to the chief censor. The king continued. There is a section that the crown prince has not read. Read it aloud. The chief censor received the scroll and unrolled it. But the moment his eyes landed on the text, his face went pale. His fingers clenched tightly around the paper. Without hesitation, he fell to his knees, his voice trembling. Your Majesty, this is merely the opinion of one individual, not the entire censorate. The court held its breath. The king studied him intently before finally speaking. I am aware of that. That is why the crown prince did not read that section, and neither will I. The chief censor lowered his head even further. Thank you, your Majesty, for your mercy. The king let out a quiet sigh before concluding. As for the punishment of the petition's author, I will deliberate on it carefully once this session is adjourned. As the court session ended and the officials began to disperse, a voice suddenly called out to the chief censor. Sung approached him, curiosity written all over his face. What was in that petition? However, the chief censor gave no response. He simply walked briskly ahead, ignoring the general's persistent questions. But moments later, the chief censor suddenly lunged forward, grabbing the collar of an elderly man. A loud shout echoed through the hall. "How dare you!" The chief censor was furious, his eyes ablaze with rage as he nearly launched himself at the old man. The surrounding officials quickly rushed in to restrain him. "Please, sir, calm yourself!" But the chief censor struggled violently, his voice rising even louder. "Move aside! This fool will be the death of us all." The elderly man, caught off guard, stammered in confusion. What do you mean, sir? What are you talking about?" The chief censor clenched his teeth. "You He jabbed a finger at the man he had seized. "Do you have any idea what you've done, suggesting the crown prince be overthrown?" His grip tightened, his gaze filled with pure contempt. Upon hearing his words, the surrounding officials froze in shock. Still gripping the old man's collar, the chief censor roared, "Who do you think you are to even speak of dethroning the crown prince?" The old man struggled to find his words, each syllable leaving his lips with difficulty. How can a crown prince who disregards the teachings of our ancestors and walks the path of betrayal still be worthy of his title?" The chief censor shot back. "And you think it's reasonable to overthrow a crown prince who is only 9 years old? Do you even hear yourself?" The old man stammered, "What does age have to do with following the wisdom of the sages?" The chief censor could no longer contain his fury. "You fool! If you wish to shift the course of power, you must wait for the right moment. You need strategic positioning, geographical advantage, and the support of the people. Those were the 3 factors that allowed His Majesty to ascend as crown prince. But right now, we have none of them." His voice grew sharper. "A reckless move will only lead to the deaths of every official in this court." A red-robed official stepped forward and spoke with unwavering resolve. "As royal officials, it is our duty to speak the truth when we witness wrongdoing. Isn't it only natural to risk our heads when challenging a king?" The chief censor fell silent, realizing the unwavering conviction of his subordinate. The other officials stood frozen, their eyes locked on him. With a frustrated sigh, the chief censor released the old man's collar. "Who would have thought someone as foolish as you could become an official?" He let out a bitter chuckle before shaking his head. "At this rate, we'll all be following this idiot straight to the afterlife." And with that, the chief censor ended their argument. This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.